couple more questions. Let's see. So, we've got another 4 minutes or so before we do any kind of video, I guess. So this is kind of a question, or if you wanted to make some comments about how the health of the planet is tied to the health of individuals. And I think I would open this one up to folks in our community group here, if you wanted to just talk about positive changes that you felt, or have you really felt a connection between having a better soil in your garden and your own physical well-being. So maybe you folks can comment first if you want, and then after everyone else has the opportunity to speak.
Not related to food security necessarily, but we like to kind of portray ourselves as humans versus nature. We're kind of somehow above nature, we're against nature, we're outside of nature. We are nature. You can't divorce us from what we are. If we want to have good health, if we want to have good mental health, we have to have a healthy planet around us. Without it, we're not going soaring off into the stars on a big spaceship cruise liner that's going to save us from this place that we live in. We're connected to here. So we have to be mindful of that and invest in taking care of the earth that we live on, because it's who we are.
So you don't have any SpaceX
I've
shoes?
got-
You're not just gonna...
I think that if we can't take care of this planet, how are we going to make Mars a utopia?
I agree with you.
Well, that's good.
Often what I felt, as I grew, till my high school, I used to think that nature is something else and we are human beings. And of late, I have learned that we are the nature, everything here. And then we are just maybe even less than 1 billionth of a nature. And then we are taking the largest portion of the nature. So somewhere, somehow, everybody, I think, has to compromise somewhere for a little time until we gain a momentum, until that becomes a bandwagon, and there is a greater movement, so that we regenerate the environment for brighter, even greener, the safer environment for the future generations.
Well, as someone who has dealt with autoimmune problems for the last 40 years, food safety has become a big issue for me, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm still here. And last spring there was a webinar, and it had to do with Maine became the first state to ban PFAS. I said, gee, that sounds interesting. I wonder what that's all about. But it was a real eye-opener for me, because PFAS are per or polyfluoroalkyl substances, or forever chemicals. So once they get in your body, they're there forever. Okay? And where they're found a lot is in biosolids, from the waste products, from us humans, and everything else that are put down toilets and sinks. And it's been used in all 50 states in the US, and as soil improvements, it's fertilizers, it's good for the soil. But then the people in Maine started to express concern over this practice, and they wanted their soils to be tested. They found PFAS, they called in researchers, the experts, to study and to test some farms. And they found huge problems with these forever chemicals. They lobbied with both sides of the House, the Democrats and the Republicans, to ban all PFAS, all 50,000 of them. There's some states that have banned certain classes, or one or two of them, but they've done them all. So they required all 700 farms in Maine to be tested for PFAS, or these forever chemicals. Some of the results: in Fairfield, just up the road from Holton, there was a dairy farm that had brought in contaminated hay from one down the road. The dairy herd was then contaminated with PFAS and these forever chemicals. And then from the waste from these animals went into the groundwater, the chemicals went into the groundwater, and 200 wells in Fairfield were contaminated. So they now will have to be water trucked in forever. So, and then there was another young clip on this video that we were watching that they were organic farmers. They were a young couple, they had a 4-year-old son, and this farm had been contaminated with these biosolids, with these PFAS. They didn't even know. They had bought their farm from another organic farmer. They were doing everything that was right. And even the other farmer didn't know that these biosolids had been put on the land. So when they went to test that farm, it was contaminated. So they actually tested the people on that farm. And the mother was on the farm. They were saying safe levels were between 150 and 300 parts per billion. The mom was 15,000 parts per billion. And she had breastfed her 4-year-old son when he was young. His levels were way higher than that. So it's, because those chemicals, accumulate in breast milk. So here we have people who thought they were doing everything that they should be doing, buying an organic farm. Now their family is poisoned. Their land is contaminated with PFAS or forever chemicals, and now they have no income. So the only thing this land they're able to use is for, some of the farms are being used as solar installations, because you can't do anything else on it. And it's, it takes a very, very long time for these chemicals to break down. So, and if you look up the health effects of PFAS, or these forever chemicals, one of the things I found is that children drink more water, eat more food, breathe more air per pound of body weight than adults, which can increase their exposure to PFAS. And microplastics, which I'll just mention later. So, I think it's kudos to Maine for looking into this. And I like this indigenous quote where it say, "The day will come when what is ethical matters more than what is profitable." And that's what they've done. Because a lot of people, these farms are being shut down, some of them that are, but it's the only jurisdiction where, you're probably gonna be able to go and get food that's not contaminated with PFAS. Because when we're buying our food in the grocery stores and it's coming from the States, it's not just Maine this is happening in, it's happening to the entire food system. And then even if you're thinking you're buying organic food sometimes, and they don't know that has been put on the land 40, 50 years ago, it's still their forever chemicals, they're still there. So, one of the things that happened that is encouraging though, is we went to a meeting last Thursday with the, let me see where I've got it here. Sorry, okay. with the Environmental Law Society and with the people from the Environmental Rights Caucus from the New Brunswick Environmental Network. And what they are doing, and it's a very positive thing, is they are working with the Green Party. They have written a Bill of Rights. It's called Bill 19, and they're working with the Green Party, and it's gone through first reading in the New Brunswick legislature. And at that meeting, they said the United Nations has declared that all people have a fundamental right to live in a healthy environment. Okay? And the federal government has passed the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, which enshrines this principle in law. Okay? So this means the process that we've been going through lately doesn't really protect us. Okay? So, however, the Supreme Court recently found that this act cannot interfere with provincial jurisdiction, okay, when it comes over economic and industrial activities. So, but this does not exempt provinces. All provinces have the duty to ensure a citizen's healthy environment. So it transfers the duty from the federal government to the province to provide the legislative guarantees to explicitly protect the environment from the kind of damage that negatively impacts the health and well-being of children. You protect the children, you protect us, and you protect the environment. So, it's passed the first reading. Now, in the first week of June, it's going to go to second reading. If anybody wants to come to the legislature and support it, then it goes to committee, and then they have to hash out if they need to make any amendments or anything, and then it becomes law. This is another layer of legislation we have to protect us. And I noticed today it came on the news that the Prime Minister is trying to get all these world leaders in to a big conference to talk about plastics. But that is coming because now it's enshrined in Canadian law. They have to look into that. Otherwise, there's gonna be legislation. Their legislation allows us to make them accountable. So it's really a big step. So, you know, when you know better, you can do better. So.
And so Gary, that's Bill 19?
Bill 19, very important, but all of this has to be done and go through committee before the writ is dropped, before a new election, because once the writ is dropped, all that legislation gets wiped off, and they have to start all over again. So we have our fingers crossed and hope people will support that.
I would just make one quick comment, and that is that it's really important for all of us to think about where soil is coming from if we're moving it from one place to another. You know, and speaking about like having 60 years left of topsoil, well, every time you pick it up with a bulldozer and put it on a dump truck and move it somewhere else, you can be sure that that 60 years has dropped. In our part of the world, we've still got people that are, I hate this word, grandfathered in for soil mining. So it's still legal for them to go down onto the Woolastook or the Nashwauk and bulldoze up soil because it's not technically topsoil. So, you know, we need to think, and there's also some questionable sites with reclaimed soil. So this is stuff that's supposed to be composted and coming out at, you know, bagged quality. But before you get any of this stuff and dump a bunch of it into your garden, or before you know, pay for a dump truck or an 18-wheeler worth of any product, you can definitely ask for samples, and you could get spot test samples, you know, from more than one pile. And I believe there's RPC Laboratory up, it's just on the corner near NBCC. I think you can take soil of folks like that and get it tested for different kinds of chemicals, hydrocarbons, heavy metals. It's not really cheap, unfortunately, so if folks are, you know, lower income folks in the community, it's a bit prohibitive, but it's definitely worth it if you're gonna, you know, put all that stuff on your property and be growing in it for the next 40 years, to make sure that there's no heavy metal contamination in it. So,
If I could just mention too that, we found out last fall, which was really disappointing, you know, Maine had done all of this and cleaning it up, but now they can't put this material on their farmland anymore. So it's been building up and they don't know what to do with it. What did they do with it? They made agreement with the processing plant here and they're bringing in 130 truckloads a month into the plant here. And the plant people here said, oh no, it's just, you know, they had a CBC interview that morning, they said, oh no, it's not a very high level in this stuff. Well, you can't get PFAS out of, you know, this waste. And then they had somebody on from Maine and they just said, there's no safe level of PFAS. So,
Could you spell that, Gary?
PFAS. If you go online and you look, PFAS and Maine, they have one YouTube after another, people with contaminated water, people, you know, who are all of this. And all I can think of is how pervasive is it in New Brunswick? You know, we have potato processing plants in New Brunswick where they source their potatoes from both sides of the border. And I know, you know, this has gone on over there or here, and then they process the potatoes in the plant, and they, you know, the peelings and everything are then taken apparently and fed to cattle. So if these PFAS are in those potatoes, how much of New Brunswick has this kind of material? So, the safest way you're gonna get is to be in a, you know, organic garden, whether you're in a community garden or your own, that's the safest food you're ever gonna have.
And it's scary stuff to hear, but when you know better, you do better. That's all you do.
so we have an opportunity for Robert if you wanted to make a comment, and then if anybody, from the group would like to make any comments as well, so.
So I guess my thing's going back to what I said recently about like eating local. I think part of food choice is like influence our community, and so I think with that, knowing who your farmer is really important. There's recently the National Farmers Union did a video series called Meet Your Farmer, I believe. And so they went to all these different farms across Canada and interviewed different farmers. And there's a particular farmer in PEI. His name's Reynold McFarland. He is a part of Pleasant Fork. And if you're ever in Summerside, PEI, and you go to the market on Saturday, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. He's a character. But kind of what he sums up is like everyone needs a guide. So you need like a beef guy, you need a pork guy, you need a fish guy, you know, but I think this goes further. I think you need like, you know, you need your person that's like an electrician, you need your carpenter, you need all these people in your life to build a community. And I think that's kind of like what we have to get back to is like rebuilding, you know, our community and our connections and knowing where our food comes from. So, you know, they might be contaminated with PFAS, like they're hopefully not, but at least we know that they're doing their absolute best to try and, you know, provide us with healthy food. And I think that's gonna go a long way if we can like reestablish those connections, so.
And how many of us remember, and there's still some farmers that are doing that now, is we used to get our meat wrapped in wax butcher paper. And there's still people at the market, you can do that. So it's not coming in foam plate with plastic wrap around it. Because then another part from the environmental rights group were saying that microplastics are another big thing that's happening. And they've been testing the placentas of you know, women after birth. And a few years ago, you know, 60% of them had microplastics in them. They did the same test last year and 100%. So, you know, this is stuff where we need this legislation, so we can go after them and, you know, get this stuff out of our food and make it safe for everybody, and especially the children.